Need a reminder of the good in the world? How about ways that you can make a difference, all while following your passions? Then you've come to the right place. Here on Be the Good with Kate, I have the honor of speaking with people from across the globe and such a wide array of backgrounds, all with the common bond of following what lights them up while making the world a better place along the way. My name is Kate Cherichello Tente, and I am so grateful you are here. If something in this episode resonates with you, please reach out. I absolutely love hearing from you. And if you're willing to spread the word, sharing these good news moments with others, a share on social, comment, review, or a text to a friend about Be the Good with Kate, all goes such a long way. Thank you. I've learned so much from all the guests on Be the Good with Kate over the years, and I hope you leave here with some nuggets that stay with you too. Here's to making the world a better place in any way, shape, or form. Welcome back to Be the Good with Kate. I am thrilled to introduce you to this week's guest. He is our season opener, and for a good reason. This is Zach Mercurio. A quick bit of his bio for you. He is an author, researcher, and leadership development facilitator specializing in purposeful leadership, mattering, and meaningful work. He advises leaders and organizations worldwide on practices for building cultures that promote well-being, motivation, and performance. But I also loved what he sent me. He just said, I'm working to ensure every person feels like they matter by giving people the skills to notice, affirm, and show people how they're needed. The rest of his really impressive bio will be in the show notes. But Zach, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that great intro.
Oh, well, you made it easy there. And Zach, I usually start with a pretty open-ended, vague question to see where you take it. But really, I have so many questions for you after listening to you talk and reading what you have written. So I want to just start with, why is it so important that people feel seen?
Hmm. It is almost impossible for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe that they matter. And we need more and more of people's contributions right now. We need people's unique gifts to solve the many complex problems that we have. And it's very hard for people to care when they don't feel cared for. And one of the things that we're seeing is that more people than ever feel invisible,
Mm.
unheard, unseen. There was a study done last year that found at work about 30% of people say they feel invisible in work or flat out ignored. Another symptom of this is loneliness. One out of every three people that's listening to this feels persistently lonely, according to the American Psychiatric Association. But one of the things we've gotten wrong about loneliness is that we think it's about connecting more. And so we're on more platforms, we're sending more messages than ever, but we're still lonely. And why is that? It's because the quality of interactions, not the quantity of interactions, matters. And the quality interaction is when we feel seen, when we feel heard, when we feel valued in our everyday interactions. So I really believe that what we're seeing is what I've been calling a mattering deficit. That it's not that people don't feel like they belong or that they're included. It's that they don't feel significant. And we can change that, which is the hope, which is why I want to be the good podcast, right?
Yes, yes,
But
indeed.
that's why. I mean, it is very hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe that they matter. And feeling seen is a fundamental need of being human.
Yeah. And the book that's coming out very soon is The Power of Mattering. And I love that title, but I also love something about your other book. And let me just read the full title out for everyone listening. The Invisible Leader: Transform Your Life, Work, and Organization with the Power of Authentic Purpose. And what I really stuck out to me in that title is you didn't say purpose, you said authentic purpose. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and then I can tie that to why I wrote this book, which I
Oh,
think is the
perfect.
prequel to my last book,
Oh, excellent.
which is interesting in a nonfiction setting. But yeah, authentic purpose is a purpose that is directed, but is both useful to others. So you can have like an aimless purpose where there's no direction, you don't know where you're going, and you can have a useless purpose where it's just a purpose to my purpose is to make more money, my purpose is to achieve and acquire. But Corey Keyes, he's a sociologist, and I borrowed this term authentic purpose from him. He says that an authentic purpose is one that's directed, it's very clear, and it's useful to others. Purpose inherently asks us the question of what use are you to the world? And what's powerful about that is that when we can think in that way, when we can be purposeful and start our day instead of thinking, what do I have to get done today? And start our day thinking, how am I going to make an impact through what I'm doing today? It opens up our emotions, our attention, and now I'll bring it back, helps us to see how we matter. Because mattering is feeling valued by those around us and knowing exactly how we add value. So having a sense of purpose helps us see how we're adding value. But the reason why I say that this book is a prequel to that book is that it's very hard for someone to find their contribution if they don't first believe they're worthy of contributing. It's very hard for people to use their strengths and see their impact if they don't believe they have strengths or make an impact. The original title of my book was Mattering Comes First because we have to create relationships around us where we make it easier for everybody to see their unique usefulness, that purpose. So I'm glad you asked about that first book.
That's really great. And this is where I say, okay, listener, if you don't already have a notepad in your hand, hit pause, go get it and bring it back because I can already think of like all the notes that I want to take when I listen back to this again. Because there's so much to just really remember on a day to day and when we're interacting with people. And Zach, looking at you now, you have so many accolades, you have done so much already, and you're still going. Where did this come from? Where did it start? Were you like this as a child? Like, how did you become who you are today?
I was the youngest of three. And when you're the youngest, you get really good at comparing yourself and entertaining yourself.
Sure.
So I was naturally curious, but I was also someone that was like, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? And so I naturally was asking those questions because I was sort of left to my own devices, as a kid. And those questions never went away. I became very interested in
Yeah.
why I was doing what I was doing. But I did end up in a job out of college that was very what focused. I
Mm.
was in advertising sales, believe it or not. And I remember I would go into the office and every day we'd talk about how to get more, make more, do
Mm.
more. And I just saw how miserable people were. But then I would go out and talk to clients, and they were real human beings with like real purposes, trying to start these businesses. But we'd go back to the office and I'd hear them being talked about like they were transactions. And I was like, there's something missing. And what I started doing was just started talking to people in everyday jobs. Like I would do mini interviews with like the metro conductor in DC and the cab drivers and these joyful people sweeping the front of a Starbucks or a Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
And I would ask them, what brings you joy? What's most meaningful to you? And they never talked about what they did. They
Wow.
always talked about the impact they made through what they did.
Mm.
They talked about the relationships that they had. So many of us are obsessed with what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. But people who really experience joy focus on why they're doing it and who they're doing it with. And I became obsessed with that. And I was like, I'm going to figure out how we create a world in which everybody knows why they're doing what they're doing, why they are, and they focus on who they're doing it with and regenerating the community around them.
I mean, there's so much too, just in terms of compassion and empathy and asking people questions. It's easy to jump to conclusions about people when we just see them. And you're just giving so many great examples right there of, but when you ask the questions, we get behind the curtain, we find out what really makes people tick. We find out ways we're all so much alike too when it comes down to it. And, a story you told, this was on, I think you told it on Jared Hardy's podcast, which is how we got connected. And Jared Hardy's podcast is On Purpose Podcast. And Zach's been a guest there a couple times. You told the story about the custodian cleaning the toilets. Can you share that? I really loved that story.
Yeah, there's two sides to that story. We did a study where we embedded ourselves with university janitors
Yeah.
for a year and a half in a frontline occupation. And we were trying to figure out what made work meaningful in a really difficult job that was often overlooked. And we asked them all the question, what's the most meaningful part of your job? And this one woman said to me, Zach, oh, it's cleaning those bathrooms in the university dormitory after the weekend. Now, I was a PhD student at the time, and so I broke researcher protocol. This is probably bad form, but I was like, that sounds gross. What do you mean? Like, and she goes, Zach, it is gross. It's the part of my job I hate the most. But because of that, every time I go into that bathroom, I say to myself, I'm cleaning this bathroom so that these kids don't get sick. And that mentality is what we found that people who believe that they matter, they tend to develop a so that mentality.
Oh, good.
They can link whatever it is that they're doing with its inevitable impact. But I think what's key is that she did not get there on her own. And this is how mattering relates. Before she got that job, she was near homelessness.
Oh, wow.
She told me it was the only job that hired her after 14 applications. She had to put food on her table. She said, though, she started that first month and she said to herself, why couldn't you have done something more with your life? You know, why are you just a janitor? She had these negative thoughts. And that was when one supervisor noticed that she was struggling and he brought her into a break room. And she told me he opened up a dictionary to the word custodian and he had her read it out loud. A custodian is a person responsible for a building and everyone in it. And he said, that's you.
Mm.
And she said it was the first time in her life that anybody showed her she was worthy.
Wow.
So, how do you go from I'm just a janitor to I'm cleaning these bathrooms so that these kids don't get sick? Moments of mattering. Moments when other people illuminate in us what we don't see in ourselves. And I asked her, I said, um, what was that supervisor's name? She goes, I have no idea. He got reassigned a month later.
Wow.
And I think this goes back to your first question. Um, that what we find in our research is that people come to believe that they're worthy and believe that they're capable through interactions with others. The power of the right words at the right time to alter the trajectory of someone's life astounds me every day. And like, so you talk about being seen. It's the small moments, right? Like when your delivery driver comes up and drops off a package. One way to find more meaning in your day immediately is instead of looking out your window and waiting for them to leave and then going out, open your door, look them in the eye and say, what's your name?
Mm.
What's important to you in your life? Why are you doing this job? And you will very quickly see that, you know, seeing people, hearing people, valuing people, slowing down, creating these moments is really what we're missing in our own lives and in society.
Yeah. It really, like, I'm sure everyone listening too is feeling this. I can think of so many examples of just those moments when someone said something to me, at even 8 years old, that still stuck with me now. And we really do have the power to just make that impact. Or I have to share this little anecdote. The other day, I have a 19-month-old son, and the other day, the garbage truck came up. And he's just starting to figure out like that's a really cool thing that comes once a week. And so I picked him up and we went to the front door with the storm door open, and he's watching the sanitation workers start to grab the trash bins, and all of a sudden, one of them gets off the truck, and you're just like very, he's doing his job, no smile or anything like that, doing his job, and then he looks up and sees Joshua looking at him and waving, and he got the biggest smile on his face. He dropped what he was doing. He starts waving back, and my son is cracking up now. And it was just the neatest little moment. And it
Yeah.
was, 15 seconds of our day and his day, but it just really boosted, I think, spirits all around. And just those reminders, I think, are always needed of the littlest things do make differences, and they really make big differences over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's an emotional story because why don't we do that for people
Mm,
as adults?
so true. So true.
Like all the people we see, we pass by every day. I mean, in this, in our workplaces, this is in our families,
Mhm.
our kids, our partners, spouses. We pass people by and we don't look upon them as like a child looks upon a
Right.
sanitation worker and say, wow, like I'm so glad you're here.
Yes. What do you tell people when they're like, but how do I make these differences? Like obviously we're giving great examples. Are there any just like simple phrases you use to help kind of boost that in people to do more?
Yeah, I mean, so we find that we can create these moments of mattering in three ways: noticing people, affirming them, or showing them how they're needed. Noticing is seeing and hearing people. Just the acknowledgement of your son, that what your son did.
Mm.
It was 19-month-old son or daughter. I don't know, his son or
Yes,
daughter.
son. Yep.
Son.
Joshua.
19, Joshua, what Joshua did is he acknowledged.
Yeah.
He was a noticer. Kids are phenomenal noticers, right? Um, But what happens is that as we grow into adults, we start labeling things. There's
Mm.
a spiritual teacher in India who said the moment a child knows the name of a bird is the moment they'll stop seeing the bird
Oh,
because it just
interesting.
becomes another sparrow.
Mm.
I've seen sparrows before. I don't have to look at this really amazing thing, right? So when we can learn when we start labeling people as a they're this, they're that, they're this, that job, they're a high performer, low performer, they're just this, we actually stop seeking to understand them. So we need to get that curiosity back to notice people. One way to do that is just ask better questions too, instead of just how are you or what's up, go beyond the greetings. What is your attention today? What's most meaningful to you today? Ask someone that you know really well, you think you know, what's something you're passionate about that I have no idea of,
Mm.
right? There's a difference between knowing somebody and noticing them. You can know your best friend, but not notice their interests, not notice that they're suffering. So noticing, we have to be better noticers. The second is affirming people. Just say a better thank you. Go beyond the thank you and good job and just show people the difference they make and how they make it. For you, I'm sure you're already doing this, but one thing to do is go to that sanitation driver when he comes back and say, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, just remember this. No matter what you do today, no matter how your week is going, you made a 19-month-old smile.
Mhm.
And I don't want you to forget that, right? That's going beyond, hey, thank you for being here and showing someone the difference that they make. And then third, show people how they're needed. 5 words, if it wasn't for you.
Mm.
So everybody listening, think about someone who you rely on in your life. And now I want you to think about the last time you told them. That's a first step after this. Go to that person and say, hey, I just want to let you know if it wasn't for you, and tell them why you rely on them. You'll see the power of mattering right there. And you'll see how these small moments can dramatically alter the trajectory of people's day, their life, how they see themselves.
Oh, fantastic. And then I did want to ask you about kind of the flip of that is the person that doesn't feel mattered. If someone's
Yeah.
there listening, and I know you talk about the importance of our environment too to feel mattered. What if someone feels stuck in an environment that doesn't support them and they don't feel valued and they feel like, I don't know how to get out? What do you say to that person?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that you can do. One is use that mentality,
Mm.
right? A lot of those janitors that I worked with felt stuck. They felt in a job that they're undervalued, but they had mental habits that allowed them to remember their significance. One guy told me that every morning he imagines if all the janitors go on strike, what the place would look like. That's actually a really interesting practice because he's reminding himself of the significance of his absence.
Hmm.
So you could even use that if it wasn't for you and add it to yourself. If it wasn't for me, my kids wouldn't get to school. Like if it wasn't for me, this wouldn't be possible at work if it wasn't for me. So even if you're not getting it, you can start seeing it, right? It's a practice habit. The other thing is ask yourself better questions. Force yourself at the end of each day to ask yourself, who did I help today, and who helped me today, right? What we think about is usually the result of what we look for. And I love that your show is called Be the Good, because if we look for the good, we'll think about the good, and there's a lot of good. Who helped you today? Um, who did you help today? And then I would say don't underestimate everyday interactions. If you feel that you don't matter, one thing that everybody has in common is the ability to contribute to another person's life every day.
Yeah.
Almost every day gives us an opportunity to interact with somebody. So focus less on what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you're checking off your to-do list, and more on how you show up in your next interaction.
That's
So as having small talk with the grocery store clerk, just saying hey and saying their name and saying, "Hey, how long have you been here?" And just watch what happens. And this is the boomerang effect of mattering. The more we show other people they matter, the more we see the reactions they have to us, the more we're reinforced with the belief that we matter.
yes, 100%. You always feel better after you've interacted, positively
Even
with
if you
someone.
don't want to, like I'm an introvert,
Well,
right?
how about that? I wouldn't have guessed that from you.
Yeah, I'm an introvert. This stuff is really hard for me, but my day is always better when I have a meaningful conversation. Like I travel a lot for work, and it's the people like when I go in, because I did research on janitors, when I go into a bathroom and I see a janitor there, I'll just say, "Hey,
Yeah,
this looks great. Thank you. Thanks for being here." Right?
it's
And it's
awesome.
just like you see the energy change in
Yes.
that person, and it's
Yes.
very contagious.
And I think there's also that reminder. I know it helps me too to remember to do things like this is we don't know what their day has been before this moment. And it could be totally awful and they just really need that little lift right now. I mean, it could have been great and they're like, okay, another great thing to add to the day. That's great too. But we don't know. So anything we can do to just give that little extra bit.
And then what's amazing? The drudgery of going to my flight, the
Oh,
drudgery of going through TSA and all of that becomes meaningful,
mm,
right? That's why meaning isn't found. Meaning is crafted. We make meaning. We sit and wait for these things to happen to us that are meaningful in our lives. But meaning is found in how you greet the TSA officer. It's found in how you look the janitor in the eyes. It's found in thanking someone for making the cup of coffee before you get up. That's where we derive meaning. Those are the things actually when you look at what fulfills people later on in life, those are the things they look back on that were the fulfilling moments of their life or that they regret not focusing
yeah.
on.
It's just been so much valuable information. And I mean, I told Zach before we hit record, it was going to be really hard to keep it short, but I promised we would because I know that this is a great launching off point now for people to go find you and follow you and read more about what you're doing and check out your books. But I do have one question before we tie all that up, and that is what what is most surprising about life right now to you? You know, career, personal life, like where you are now and all that you have created. Is there something that just stands out as, wow, this is so surprising to me now?
Surprising. Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And it's surprising, because of what I do.
Mm.
I'm sort of obsessive on how I interact with them
Oh, sure.
because I know how important it is. But I'm still constantly surprised at how naturally children get all of this.
Mm.
One of my 10-year-old is starting to ask me what I do, and I was trying to explain it. He's like, "Oh, do you like teach kindergarten to adults?"
That's amazing. You
And I said,
teach
"Yes."
kindergarten to adults.
So
Yes.
I'm really surprised at how easily kids get this. I mean, if kids were leading organizations, they'd be the best organizations in the world. But they're more curious, they're more
Yeah.
respectful, they're more inclusive than anybody. But something happens, and we start getting rewarded for what we acquire, achieve, and produce for ourselves, and we lose all of the things that generate the energy to acquire, produce, and perform. And then we get ourselves in these cycles of burnout and these cycles of invisibility. And so I'm surprised right now of how my work is really trying to like bring the wisdom of children into organizations.
That's a great perspective too. And, you know, now that I have a child as well, like to see things, you know, everyone always tosses around that phrase to see things through a child's eyes and all of that. But it really is such an impactful way to think of things because, like you just said, they do see things in a very innocent, wide eyed, curious way. And it's wonderful.
Yeah. But
That's so cool.
it shows us some way that we were inherently wired to be
Mm.
that gets diluted.
And we can get back there. You know,
We can.
every
Yeah.
inch forward towards that
And
is,
what's also surprising is how easy this stuff is,
yeah,
but
yeah.
how much thought it takes, right?
Mm.
You can do this in your next interaction. You don't need a program.
Right.
You don't need a new platform. You don't even need you don't need to go buy something. It's right here.
Yeah. Absolutely free. And then we benefit as much as the other person too. Zach, how do we find you and find your books and tell us the best links?
Best place right now is powerofmattering.com.
Great. Great.
Powerofmattering.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I have a really fun LinkedIn community. So Zach Mercurio there. And then feel free to send me an email, zach@zachmercurio.com.
Beautiful. Zach, I can't thank you enough. And I could talk to you all day. This has been so insightful. And I'm really excited to share this episode, especially as the first one of the new season.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, a 5-star review, like, or comment means the world to me. And if you found insight in this episode, chances are someone else will too. Share with a friend to give them a boost today. Until next time, I'm Kate Cherichello Tente, and this was Be the Good with Kate.